Connection
really
like
weird.
that is that you literally, like, especially nowadays, you can't know. There's so many, like, ways that you can, like, essentially oppress someone and not realize it, or be completely aware of it, but you can act like you don't realize it because of the way society is currently constructed.
Yeah. Well,
So it's like every
it.
single day is like a guessing game. Like, is it,
Yeah.
like, am I receiving the negative reaction that I'm receiving because I did something wrong, or am I receiving it because I'm marginalized?
Right.
It's anxieties like that that can cause people to just like basically like struggle with the entirety of their life because they don't know what they're doing is genuine or if it's something that has something to do with the fact that they're marginalized people. Like,
that's it.
Hey, actually,
I've
hey,
never
TJ?
feel marginalized for being Jewish.
TJ, let me
Not
throw.
once. Sorry.
There's something on Reddit that popped up like way earlier that someone was talking about. Where basically there's this black dude who basically he got into like every Ivy League school, which is hard to do in general, no matter like who you are. But this was a black dude, so of course Reddit, being the amazing website that they are, automatically jumped to the idea that it was affirmative action that this black dude got all these scholarships to all these Ivy League schools. And it's just like, really? Really? Is that how you feel? That's true. That's really how it is, huh? It's affirmative action. It can't be the fact that maybe this kid has maybe worked his ass off for a really long time and might actually be fucking brilliant.
So I mean, I feel like there are two things there. One is that I appreciate you actually saying that because it's nice when people can actually draw conclusions between things, because this is also a thing that happens towards women often.
Oh,
right?
I can also.
Right?
I mean,
like,
if we're talking about like women or like queer identity, I can do that. Like.
Well. I mean, all because obviously I can't think that, but I just want to mention this idea of something that I see a lot, right? That the women who testimony this a lot of constantly being positioned towards the idea that the only way they got to a place is because they are themselves women. So I that's cool to mention also. Geez, oh god, I don't remember. I totally forgot my train of thought, but that was something I wanted to mention, I guess. That's pretty much it.
So what's going on in Dragon Quest?
I'm making progress!
Are you?
Yeah! I found, like, the dungeon I needed to go to.
Oh, I see there's actual
This is like a different one,
levels now.
too.
But, yeah, I wanted...
This is like a different game now, like, Jesus.
Hey, TJ, I wanted to throw something in there real quick about, like, how persecution manifests itself, and how, as a result, how persecuted people can become persecutors, and like how that kind of like
it's a huge cycle, really.
I just wanted to say, without making it the central topic of conversation, that happened in organized atheism overnight.
I literally.
Yeah, but it happens in Christianity too.
Yeah, but it took a lot.
Christianity is a weird like victim complex that I don't understand.
That's because Christianity didn't have Twitter for a really long time.
Yeah, for like atheism, it was like one morning I just fucking blinked and suddenly everybody was shit.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's why I have like a weird relationship, because I mean, for all intents and purposes, I'm like pretty much an atheist, but I'm also like Socratically aware that like I only know enough to know that I don't really know.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what that
I
is.
I usually identify with agnosticism over anything, which
Yeah.
probably sounds like completely fucking obnoxious, but I mean, like,
It does.
I'm not about to
I-
associate myself with atheism. Are you kidding me?
Well, that's it too. I've sort of like I guess been leaning more towards agnosticism, only because it's not that I have any real like investment in like actual spirituality or mysticism. I just don't really know what's out there, and it could potentially, like, there's so many like possible configurations of like the universe outside of what we know that I have no idea, and I just don't want to make any statements.
Exactly.
Like I don't want to like adhere to anything in particular.
I don't want to identify myself in a way that makes it seem like I'm absolutely 100% this way, and like if I'm because I'm in this group, that means I think this way, and that I think this thing, and that you have to think this thing. It's like, no.
Yeah, I don't want to get like dogmatic about anything. Like
I don't care.
The only stuff I really adhere to is stuff that has been like scientifically proven after like lots and lots of interrogation, falsification, like collection of data, etc. Like it's something that has been over a long period of time empirically proven to be true. But other than that,
if anything, I do believe in the concept of spirituality, but I feel like a lot of that has to do with mostly a lot of like the research and like reading that I've been doing like, I've like especially like this last like couple of months particularly, I've been trying to read up into like a lot more black reading and like black spirituality and stuff like that, because I feel like over the last like couple of months, like just reading that stuff has like really helped me like shape like an identity that I can feel comfortable with, because I feel like by understanding like the way that different people like me see the world like helps me like form an identity that I can be comfortable in, where I can say like, this is me, but I'm still black, and I still got that shit in my chest, but I'm not about to be like, you know, everything is like an attack against me or anything like that. It's like it's more awareness rather than like awareness as part of the identity rather than make it specifically the identity, I guess you could say. I don't even know if I'm saying words anymore. I'm like 4 beers in.
What is it called? I guess personally, I never actually really found the need to like make anything out of that. It just like the concept of those things never really like bothered me enough for me to feel like I need to like go between atheism or spiritualism, maybe, you know. But it's never been something. I actually just remembered what I wanted to say before, but I totally thinked out on. It was because TJ talked about Ivy League schools and this black kid who was going through a bunch of Ivy League schools and felt like he proved himself. Yeah, so I mean,
it happened like this morning. It's really easy to find.
Well, I mean, I always feel like sometimes, and this is the more actually that I read about identity, that I come to the conclusion that a lot of, and this isn't something that I don't say on Twitter too often, just because Twitter tends to move towards certain areas, and I'm like, you know, it's weird.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I don't actually think that discussions of race and probably identity as a whole can get very far without discussions of capitalism. And this is something this is something I'm just like, and I don't want to come with like a brochure list or anything saying those things, but like I just come to that conclusion the more and more that I look into this stuff. And I think about this idea of, and I think how a lot of discussions around race tend to get limited because they tend to circulate around identity politics and never move into it. So this idea of an Ivy League school, right? Where the idea of the black person was to prove themselves, yet they prove themselves through capitalist institutions, through these sort of very kind of problematic. The Ivy League institution is incredibly problematic. Ivy League is basically just like a bunch of rich kids who go through a thing, right? And the idea that if a black person can go through those same very problematic, very capitalist, and very sort of classist institutions, then the black person has proved themselves, yet without a prism of capitalism, then therefore this is actually kind of weird, right? It's this idea, well, it's the same, it sort of becomes its own form of lean-in feminism, where it's like, well, this marginalized identity can do capitalism just as good as you can, therefore, in itself, these identities are themselves are as equals, but in itself, this also necessitates a lot of actual repressions in general. So it's just one of those things, because I never really believed this idea that the black person's value comes out of their ability to just participate in those institutions just as well as other people do. It's the idea that if a black person could be a CEO, and therefore that's a good idea. Like, no, I don't care about black people being CEOs. I don't want CEOs in general, right? That's the point.
Thing about like black people and like education and stuff like that is that there's actually some really interesting statistics about it. I was reading about in Who's Afraid of Post-Blackness Spicy Ray, which again I would totally recommend like anybody read. But like basically like the black kid in class who gets like a 3.0 or higher GPA has on average one and a half fewer friends than the black kid who doesn't. And as that GPA goes up, they tend to become less popular compared to where if you're white and you have that high of a GPA, you become more popular. So it becomes this kind of conflict in your teenage years, which, as you know, are like your most impressionable years, where you start actually learning about like the world and stuff like that. Where like people are told that you have to be smart and you have to succeed. But black teenagers are being punished for this very same thing because they're losing friends. And when you're a teenager, like, popularity is like 75% of your school like experience. Like, if you don't have that, then you had a shitty school experience.
It's the idea that you want to find a social place, you want to find a sort of space that you can identify with.
Exactly, and a lot of
Holy fuck!
A lot of it comes from internalized racism, where like basically. Oh shit.
I found
Yeah.
the silver harp. That
Yes!
only took 5 fucking hours.
Yeah.
God bless. But yeah,
So
fucking,
I wonder with this sort of like if you are sort of non-normative and you demonstrate any kind of like ambition of any kind that doesn't
that's the really shitty thing about internalized racism is that a lot
yeah
of, especially in high school, it comes from this idea that in order to be black, you have to meet a certain set of demands, and if you don't meet those, then like even your black friends will completely like
Well,
disown you. And case in point, which is when you get that high GPA as a black person, you start making less friends because because
yeah
to other black teenagers when they're raised around that kind of environment, they see a person like achieving and doing that and like going to get high GPAs and getting to those advanced classes as betraying the race because those groups like inherently have less black people. So it's like they don't see it as a black person infiltrating a white group. They see it as a black person becoming one with that white and
yeah.
losing
So-
their
so-
black
It's
sense
really
of spot.
fucked up too that the things that we would kind of associate with enlightenment are also like really deeply connected with whiteness.
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
It's like a lot of the joke comes from like whiteness, where it's like, oh, you have to be smart or you have to be enlightened in order to be white, and if you don't have that, then you're not white. But
Like
if you
most
do
white
like all
people
these
I know
other
are fucking stupid, so
Yeah,
so-
exactly. My
Like,
father's an Arkansan and my mother is a
I'm gonna,
Texan.
like,
Don't even
drop
get me
this,
started.
this book like a million times, but again, like fucking Teray did this thing where he was doing what's it called when you're like sky jumping or whatever the hell when you're like in the plane and then you jump out and
Skydiving?
then you fall and yeah, skydiving. Like he was doing that and he got like a lot of flack from like his brothers and sisters that were like, you know, why are you doing that? That's like crazy white people shit. And he was just like, I don't know, because that kind of like puts like that itself like and that's a reason why I've been trying to like reference like white people do this and stuff like that. Like even when I'm like joking, I try to reference it less, just because like even like those jokes seem to put like a limit on what you can do as a marginalized person. Like when you say, "Oh, that's so white," then it's like, "Oh, well, I can't do that anymore now." So that's an activity down the list. So now like.
So-
So in a way, it's like when you say stuff like that, it's kind of like perpetuating this racism that if you're a certain race, you can only do certain things. And I've been finding like a huge amount of conflict with that lately, and it's why I've been, I guess,
So,
I guess you could say talking about it a lot more, but at the same time, not really. But it's one of those things that we don't really think about, because like when it comes to like joking about like white people and stuff like that, it's always like, oh, making fun of this white person for doing this thing. But then it's like, oh, but what if this colored person does this thing? Does that mean that they're acting white now? And then it becomes like this whole complicated thing, because race in 2014 and 2013 and 2012 is so different than the way that it was 10 years ago that it requires like a huge restructuring of the way that we think about it and the way that we talk about it, the way that we discuss it. And a lot of that is just like people aren't fully down for that because they feel like a lot of it is coming from like, oh, well, you can't make fun of white people for enjoying this thing. It's like, no, it's not because we're protecting white people. It's because we want, other people to be able to have the freedom to do what they want without being cast out of their race.
I'm gonna say a few things on there. Hopefully, not forget them. One of them is that I'll agree that I also deal with a lot of this idea of what becomes formally white and not, and that a lot that certain aspects of anti-racist movements tend to actually perpetuate this idea of that, and that the essential blackness, again, I will note this, I'll keep on this, the problematic idea of the essential blackness comes from a lack of capitalist critique. It does, and Fanon does this too, where Fanon will discuss the island of Martinique, and he'll say, well, Martinique, they don't discuss they don't recite black folk stories to their children, therefore they have white visions, and it's like, well, no, again, but Fanon misses a Marxist critique. That's why you can't actually make that jump. I'll also note that when I was a kid, I used to be that kid. I used to be that kid, the really smart kid in all the big classes, the only black kid in the big class, in the smart science classes and all that bullshit. And people go, oh god, he can talk really articulate.
Oh my god, you articulate so well. It's amazing.
Yeah, I was that kid, but it also meant that I had no black friends, right, in a sense, and it also meant that a lot of my friends were white, and that was actually because I when I was in high school, I found out that the only kids who were actually like at least in my high school, it's the idea that I was feeling like the only kids who were interested in things I was interested in, which was mostly science and